So, good morning to those of you who just joined us. I'm really happy that we've got so many people on this webinar today. I'm Carly Brookfield. I'm Chief Executive of Driving Instructors Association and Diamond Advanced Motorists, which are partners in this scheme. I have with me Sarah Smithurst from the National Trailer and Towing Association, Julie Pywell, Howard Redwood, who some of you may recognise as one of DIA's highly qualified trainers, Tom, who is managing this webinar from us from a technical point of view, and on the phone, because he's out and about today, is Terry Bassenthwaite, who is also from NTTA and a face, well, not a face you can see, but a name that you will recognise from the sector as well. So today, we're going to take you through a presentation of what the Safe Towing Scheme looks like. What is it? Who is it? What does it involve? Is it going to be something that is going to be attractive to you? But what I'd like to say from the offset is a couple of bits of housekeeping. We're going to whiz through as much as we can today because we know that you are time-poor individuals and want to get back to your actual day jobs. So forgive us if we go fast at times, but we've only got an hour really. We will record this session so you can go back over it, and for those that missed it, and we're going to have a question session at the end. You can type your questions into the Q&A button that you can see in the functions at the bottom of your screen during the whole presentation, but we're only going to answer the questions all at the end. That just helps keep the webinar ticking on at a fast pace as well. The team will monitor the question section though, the functionality there during the webinar, just in case there is anything absolutely burning, has to be answered or dealt with at the time. But as I said, otherwise we're going to deal with the questions at the end and take people's feedback as well. What I'd like to point out from the offset today is that this is not an absolutely fully formed scheme at this moment. It's the majority formed, the majority is done behind the scenes, but we wanted to hold these sessions with you because we wanted to take the feedback of the industry. We can see from Facebook comment and comments in the DVSA sessions that there is some feeling that the industry hasn't been part of the consultation on the development of these new schemes. And whilst we were asked by government to be one of the organising bodies that put forward one of these schemes, we didn't want to just do it as a done deal. We wanted to bring as much as we could to the industry when it was ready, get your feedback on that and incorporate that as we launch, but also evolve with your feedback as we monitor the scheme as well. So, this is not something that is not finished, but it's also not finished to the point that we can't take feedback from you people on the ground as to what else you'd like to see with it, what's wrong with it, and I'm sure you'll be just as quick to tell us that as what you want from it, and also have that opportunity to make it a much better scheme to work for the end user, the driver who wishes to engage in towing trading, and the trainer who will actually deliver the scheme as well. So I just wanted to say that from the offset. So you'll see little bits of the scheme that don't look quite perfect yet, and that's quite normal in products and service development, as you want to work with the audience to make sure that it's best it can be. And as I said, there is this understanding that we will evolve the scheme over time to make it even better as well. The one thing we'd also say is, whilst I know that people are extremely frustrated and extremely stressed by the whole debacle over B+E, we are where we are now and we have to move on with delivering this new way of working. Of course, these accredited schemes and the whole approach to B+E training and having no tests is something the government has promised to review, and you have our word that we will keep them to that promise and ask for a review in a timely manner as well. But we are where we are and we are moving forward with this scheme now. But the other thing I would like to point out is that both NTTA and DIA, throughout the discussions about the dropping of B+E testing, were vehement opposers of the dropping of B+E testing. It was the letters of DIA and NTTA that were read out in parliamentary sessions, which were challenging the amendments to the Acts that would actually allow the dropping of B+E testing. And we did become somewhat of a thorn in Grant Shapps' side for quite a while as we kept challenging those amendments, and he had to create new amendments to get that finally through. So we didn't want to be in this position either, but we are where we are, to keep repeating that, and we now need to move forward with that. So in today's webinar, are we going to spend a huge amount of time looking back? Not necessarily. We're going to be focused on the future and seeing whether this scheme is something that can improve standards of towing and towing training going forwards for the driver customer, but also provide that framework in which trainers of B+E can also develop their skills and knowledge as well. I'm not going to be talking as much as you think I am for this session. I'm just going to be doing the introductory slides. Howard Red was actually going to come in and talk about the training scheme itself and the resources that we'll be offering to trainers and trainees. Sarah's also going to chip in where I completely missed the point, as I probably am going to do, or she's got some questions that she knows that are the burning ones that you as trainers have got as well. And as I said, we'll go to your individual questions and feedback right at the end, and we'll be taking those very seriously indeed. So we're going to introduce the scheme in this session. We're going to discuss how it works. We're going to try and demonstrate the benefits. We hope you feel when you walk away from this session today, whatever your viewpoint coming into this session is, that there are at least some benefits to the scheme. We're going to explain the criteria for approved centres and what the process is for those who wish to become involved in the scheme. And we're going to explain what individual trainers are going to get from the scheme, as well as the end customer, the driver themselves. So we can tab on to the next slide. I have to do a bit of Chris Whittyism in this and ask somebody else to keep tabbing forward. So what is a safe towing scheme? It's a scheme that is essentially set up to provide a recognised and certified training assessment route for drivers wishing to tow. It aims to improve towing standards through pressure training and assessment. It's delivered via a blend of engaging e-learning and practical training. So that is one of the differences between the safe towing scheme and the two others that have been launched to the market, is that we've developed some e-learning resources on top of the practical training. So that includes things like online courses, as well as theory quizzes and tests, so people can develop their knowledge online and flexibly at home before they actually engage in training, and also test their knowledge when they are undertaking some practical training as well. The syllabus will cover core areas of towing with additional specialist pathways for recreational, for example, boat and caravan, animal transport, plant and equipment towing as well. So there is a core training course here, but we're going to adapt it over time so it better suits the needs of those specific sectors. And we'll be working with organisations in those sectors, not only to bespoke those courses in that respect, but also to be able to target those courses as a result to their memberships and market what you do if you're accredited under this scheme. The scheme is delivered in partnership by the National Trailer and Towing Association, which is the main body in the UK representing the light towing industry, and Diamond Advanced Motorists. We are an internationally accredited provider of advanced driver training and testing, and we're a DVSA accredited driver testing body. If you can tab on, please, Tom. So an overview of the scheme itself in terms of training, and this is an overview of the larger scheme, which is the DVSA's new approach and the trailer and towing, actually TTAC, basically, the group that we create an acronym for, and is a combination of stakeholders in towing that developed the new syllabus. The scheme requires professional training and safe principles of towing a light trainer, and that requires a parity of standard and a consistency of standard in the delivery of training throughout Great Britain. So that's overall what the DVSA approach to this is trying to achieve, and what the underlying schemes are trying to achieve. A parity and consistency of standard of course content delivered throughout Great Britain. A parity of assessment and the delivery of the assessment by trainers and assessors. A recognised standard for end users in terms of particularly those like fleet who want an end user and endpoint assessment or accreditation for the drivers that they're going to put through this scheme. And the scheme overall has support from regulatory bodies such as Department for Transport, DVSA, and the motor insurance industry, which we'll expand upon in a moment. So let's move on. So we just briefly touched on who are the two main bodies involved in this specific scheme. So the whole approach of the safe towing scheme, all the materials that we see, all the extra learning content on top of the DVSA syllabus, and all the administration scheme is created and delivered in partnership by the National Trailer and Towing Association and Diamond Advanced Motorists, who I mentioned before, which is part of DIA, but delivers driver testing and training across occupational and kind of social and domestic drivers across the globe, in everything from kind of post-test 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds who just pass a test and want to do a little bit more driver training, right through to fleets in places like as far flung as Asia and the Middle East, who are working in the oil and gas industry as well. And it's a really highly respected standard of advanced driver training. So not only is a safe towing scheme accredited by government, as is an accrediting body, there is dual accreditation of this scheme by NTTA and also a recognised provider of driver and rider training assessments. So the scheme is obviously also recognised by the Council for Accredited Trailer Training, which is the council that was set up of stakeholders to basically discuss the problem of the vacuum left by an absence of B+C testing and what we were going to do next in a nutshell. And sought subsequently to develop a syllabus and standards for B+C training in the future. As I said in the top of my little speech there, we're also currently working to engage with large membership organisations or organisations representing sectors who have large underlying memberships of people who would be interested in towing training. And those involve people in the equine space, and animal transport, the leisure towing industry, all of those kind of things. So we're seeking their endorsement for the scheme, and many have already indicated they're very happy to endorse the scheme and that they would be very happy to promote it as well. And that's a benefit of the scheme, that we're able to get that attraction of the scheme out to their large audiences as well. All of those industry bodies and membership bodies do promote some kind of trailer training, but it's quite sporadic and not consistent, or it might just be one big company who's represented to their audiences. This creates a fairer and leveler playing field of people who are approved under the scheme that their customers can choose to undertake training with. Next slide, please. So quickly, because I'm more the salesperson than I am the expert in the actual B+E side, admittedly, I'll let Howard take that one on, Sarah and Terry, but I'm going to go through the benefits of Safe Towing Scheme and pitch those up front with all honesty here. So the Safe Towing Scheme is one of the only 3 government recognised and accredited training routes for B+E that exists in the new world. We uniquely deliver within our scheme, though, on top of all the benefits that become from being part of a government-approved scheme, a range of learning and assessment resources to support both the trainer and their candidates. So we're not just sitting here saying, yeah, we'll approve you, give us some money, here's a badge. We've also developed some resources to support the training organisations. Whether you think you need it or not, they will be there as part of the package, and also to deliver some learning resources to the trainee as well. Whilst our syllabus does follow the core DVSA B+E training syllabus, we have to, otherwise we wouldn't be accredited for that. We've additionally developed a series of learning assessment sessions and resources to support that practical training, an online introductory course which will help candidates prepare for towing training before they even hit the road, and come to you with some baseline knowledge of regulation, legislation, the key risks of towing, all of those kind of things, which in turn helps you manage your risks and really focus down on the practical training that you want to do, rather than talking about lots of theory before they go in there. This is a unique aspect of our course. I don't believe, unless they've done something in the last week that Skills for Logistics or RTITB are offering online supportive learning for the trainer as well. And once they've done the online course, which Howard will talk you through in a moment, there are also theory quizzes to help candidates test their knowledge once they've done the course. These are mini theory quizzes. They're not a pass or fail, as Howard will point out later on. They're just to help people understand whether from the course, have they acquired any knowledge, and can they take that through into practical training. And as part of the programme, there are also mini assessments for practical trainers to be able to undertake, and resources to help you do those, so you can keep testing people throughout training as well. If we can move on to the next slide. What also differs from our scheme from others maybe that are in the market already, there is going to be a certified assessment route to our scheme. So it will be an optional final assessment, but there will be the ability for all candidates that undertake the full training course to also undertake an optional final assessment, which will consist of a theory test and a practical assessment. That will result in an advanced towing certificate, which will be dual accredited by Diamond Advanced Motorists and the NTTA. And is also obviously accredited by the Safe Towing Scheme, which is in turn approved and accredited by government. And as I said, the assessments will include a practical test, which will be delivered by those centres who choose to become an approved assessment centre. More on that later on. And an online multiple choice theory test. As I say, that is unique. No one, as far as we're aware, is offering a multiple choice theory test as part of their offering. And then they are offering some kind of practical test, but they've not really done much with it other than just use the B+E test from DVSA days. So the key benefits to trainees, your end customer, is online introduction to towing course and theory quiz to test their knowledge. So they come with a little bit more knowledge to you. So that's in turn a benefit to the trainer. It's a government endorsed training route, particularly if they are doing towing training for some vocational purpose. They'll be able to have a certificate that shows they've gone through a government endorsed training route, or if they're just somebody who wants to have that knowledge themselves and know that that's endorsed by an official scheme. There will be the internationally recognised Diamond Advanced Training Mark is also what will be internationally recognised about the Advanced Towing Certificate on completion. We're well recognised in fleets across the world for our driver training standards. And we've also negotiated some insurance discounts with well-known insurers in this space as well. And we thought that was really important because one of the questions people are always going to ask us is, why would people engage in this scheme? What's the incentive to the end user? So I think there are some benefits in there. We're happy to take feedback on what other benefits that we could build in. And over time, as we evolve the scheme, we'll look to add more benefits to that to make sure that more people see that there is a real reason to engage in training other than just the pure safety aspect, which should be the most important, but we know isn't always when it comes to consumers. Can we move on, please? I'll let Howard probably talk through the details of this slide a little bit more, but as well as having developed this B+E syllabus, so we were integral in helping develop the new syllabus, the Safe Towing Scheme has additionally developed a Train the Trainer programme to help individual B+E trainers develop their professional knowledge and gain official recognition for such. Not every B+E trainer has a professional driver training qualification or one in the specific area of B+E training. So elements of this scheme will help those trainers actually gain some official recognition for their training as well. And for more benefits on the scheme for the trainers, Howard's going to cover that off to some respects in his presentation, but there will be all of that information in the Becoming an Approved Centre application guide. But I think one of the key benefits is all of those supportive resources that we will be adding in, and that ability to develop your own skills and knowledge as a trainer and gain some certification for that, plus be entered into the register of approved trainers under the Safe Towing Scheme. So if anybody asks, as a public customer or a fleet customer, which I would do as a decision maker in a firm, why should I use you? What are your qualification background? What's your quality assurance? Who's endorsing you? The Safe Towing Scheme offers that benefit as well. If we can move on. We'll talk about this in a bit more detail as well, because I know this is one of the burning questions. Developing a network of approved training and assessment centres is obviously a core element of the scheme. So existing B+E trainers and training organisations can become a Safe Towing Scheme approved centre, and there's two types of centre, and benefit from accredited status and a range of resources that we've talked about briefly so far. Fleets can also apply to become approved training organisations if they want to do in-house training and assessment. And as well as becoming an approved training centre, existing training centres who meet the criteria can also become approved assessment centres, and they will be the people offering the final accredited assessment. So not like the old system where you would send people off to the DVSA and they would pocket all of the fee for the delivery of the testing service. Those who become and choose to become an approved assessment centre will be conducting the tests themselves and keeping the majority of the fee once certification and theory test fees have been taken out of there as well. The scheme overall and the training providers will be supported by insurers. Trainees will be able to access exclusive insurance discounts on completing their training, and an extra discount for those who complete those final assessments as well. The reason for this is the insurance industries that we've been engaging with, the insurance brokers, they believe that through better training, through a approved scheme where they know there's a consistent training program being delivered and there's quality assurance to that training, that actually creates less of a risk with the trainees themselves. They know that those trainees have been exposed to a quality program. They also know that the risk of somebody who has bothered to do an extra assessment and has been assessed under a formal assessment framework is probably going to be a less risky person as well. So that is why the insurance industry wants to engage in schemes such as this. Can we move on, please? So who's the scheme actually targeted at? The scheme will deliver to two core audiences. Those are the driver training customer, the trainee, the person who wants to undertake towing training, and the approved centre. You guys, we're pitching to you guys right now what our scheme is about. You are a customer of the scheme, and that's why we want your feedback and we want you to be engaged in the scheme. The secondary audiences that we're talking to are large membership organisations, large fleets, and sector bodies who have large underlying audiences of people who've got an interest in trailer training. So part of our job at the scheme is going to be marketing you as approved centres and the overall scheme to the kind of customers that you people want as well, and demonstrating the benefits of this scheme. And also, obviously, other secondary audiences are wider driver education bodies, road safety, motoring stakeholders, who will also be appraising of the scheme to make sure that they endorse that as well. DVSA and DFT are already on board. We've been talking to people like Highways England, as was National Highways Now, and other large motoring organisations and road safety stakeholders to make sure that they're promoting the scheme as well. Next slide, please. So I'm going to hand over to Howard now, who's going to go through the actual training and assessment programme itself in a little bit more depth. Howard, off you go.
Yeah, thank you, Carly. If you don't mind, everybody, I'm going to keep my camera off because it widens the broadband width and I don't keep breaking up. So first of all, I'm going to sort of really talk about where we're looking at, what sort of areas we're training in here. And you can see there from the bullet points that we will be looking at the trainers will be training in the areas of these type of trailers and caravans, etc. One that is missing there is obviously high worth, people that move very expensive cars around as well. We haven't got that on there, but of course, some of you will be doing bespoke stuff with that. But this system we've got, which I'm going to explain to you now, is dual purpose. It is for the company who have to satisfy their occupational safety and health requirements, and those who just want to do this for pleasure. So what I'm going to do now is ask Tom to move on to the next slide, please, if you will, and talk about the journey that the trainees, that's the candidates, what journey do they actually take? Well, first of all, they identify they want to do the training, whether it be a company or whether it be an individual, and they search for a centre that is a safe towing scheme approved centre for training, and they register with the centre, who in turn you register that candidate with us, so that they can get the when they do their assessment, it's all registered, certificates, etc. Access is granted to an introductory online course, and I'll go through this in a few moments. It's divided into 6 learning sessions, and these learning sessions are the what we call the professional aspects of towing. That's what it covers. All of these aspects link to the national standards for towing, which is Unit 2.3 of the National Driving Standards, and also cross-reference completely with the new DVSA's syllabus for towing. So we're actually making sure we tick all the boxes to make this as robust as we possibly can. So they go on to get granted to the introductory online course. They're regarded as 6 learning sessions rather than modules. Because the DVSA used the words modules in their syllabus, we didn't want to use that as well. So we're calling them introductory learning sessions. They're quite small, they're quite robust. They do go through the details of what is required, and it really helps their knowledge to be able to come to you with a bit more savvy of what they're trying to do. It's a bit of a softer touch, rather than walking into the wall of fire and being told, especially in a company, tomorrow you're going on a towing course. If we can give them this break-in with this introductory theory, with a test of their knowledge, so they can reinforce their knowledge and remember it better, they can come to you and say, right, let's go through what you've done on the assessments, and we can talk it all through. And it's just going to be a bit of a help for them to settle down, to make it easier for you to do their training as well. It doesn't cost them anything either. It's actually free, this online thing. So each session is followed by a short auto-marked multi-response assessment. There's no longhand stuff, so we've tried to be inclusive as we can, client-centered as we can with everybody, So people with learning difficulties, reading difficulties, we are trying to allow for any of those sort of things in this, and the overview in the assessments will be voiced over as well, so it's read to them. All they have to do is the assessments at the end. The course is not a pass or fail, gives the insight of knowledge prior to any off-road or on-road training, and they also complete a form that we've put together for your benefit as a trainer. And this is a form that has questions on it, putting them into scenarios to find out how they would deal with things and how they research on what to do. So it's actually finding out their best learning strategy. So how you would train them, what is the preferred method of taking on information and the preferred method for learning, so that, again, it's inclusive. It's a marketing ploy for you to say that you are doing it in a client-centered way, that you are trying to be able to respond to anybody's needs as best you can with the facilities you have. The trainees start their practical off-road training. That's the first thing they'll do after they've done the introductory theory, and you've gone through the preliminary form with them as well, so you can get to know what they want, do all the off-road stuff, and then they've got the practical assessments on those off-road areas, which we're recommending are done by all candidates before they do any of the on-road training, because that safeguards you. You're in a situation then where you are minimizing the risk. It's something that the DVSA did to a degree, where you did all the off-road elements to the training, and then they went on road and did the on-road bit, but you did all the off-road stuff beforehand. That's no different than what you did with B+E, except we're asking you to do an assessment. We have assessment forms for it, and instead of marking it as a pass or fail, you're going to mark it as a risk element. Now, by doing that, we can't do pass or fail. We're not licensed acquisition. We're not legally able to do that. But if we say it's a risk element, first of all, we're helping the company with their occupational safety and health. Secondly, we're able to put to the trainee that, yes, they've got a competence, but perhaps they might want to try and increase that competence by taking ownership of their learning. So when they go on the road, they're not going to go like a bat out of hell. They're going to think, right, I'm on the road here. I've gone through a competence-based aspect of training, but I'm not the best one in the world. They're going to be a little bit more care worthy on the road and want to come back and perhaps do some more training, or at least be wary that they haven't got the experience that others have got. If we say to them, great, you've passed, then they automatically think there's no more to learn. And that is the biggest problem we've got in road safety, is driver education, where we have this driving test and people say, you've passed your test and that's it. No one wants to do any more after that because they've got that ticket. So we're doing it as a risk thing, mainly done that way because the companies need it as occupational safety and health. They work on risk factors rather than pass or fail. So if we move on to the next slide, please, Tom. And what we've got, the training program, this introductory e-learning six session course we've got is split into the following here. We've got the first one, those 6 professional aspects we're talking about, is the learning session 1 is towing law and regulations. There's a short online quiz. All of this matches against the national towing standards. There are some introductory films that have been produced, and all of these sessions have an introductory film attached to them as well. So they look at that very early on. We go through some slides which gives information, and also we then do, some of these have got 5 questions and a couple of them have got 10 questions, but all of the information that is in those questions is really to see how astute they are and what information have they taken on from the PowerPoint presentation and the film as well. So there's no reason, the information is there, all they have to do is to apply the information to the questions effectively. So session 1 is towing law and regulations, followed by a short online quiz. Then they move on to session 2, trailer safety checks. Again, there's a film there, short online quiz. Session 3, loading and securing, is a very short film there as well. And then it's a short quiz again. Session 4, unhitching and rehitching, short online quiz. Session 5, reversing. That's a film showing the reversing maneuver in the 66 by 11 meter yard with all of the cones in the correct place. A very good, very good example of that being done properly. So that's the film they see, and then there's questions about it, technical knowledge, etc. And then the online quiz, and then number 6 is the on-road driving. Now there is no film for that, obviously. That is a session that's things to consider on road, which they will have, not just because they can drive a vehicle, but when the aspects of towing a trailer, the considerations of how would that vehicle behave with a trailer, the pendulum effect, the stopping, the acceleration, the space, the extra space the vehicle needs, etc. All of that is really set out in a way to get them to think about, especially having driven the trailer before, they haven't been anywhere near one, thinking about, hang on, I've got something to learn here. I've got to take ownership of this. I'm going to be going to a training session for learning to take place, and I have to be prepared for it. Then once they've done that and they've filled the form in and you've read through the form with them on the applications of how they learn, you can check their licenses as well. That needs to be done, obviously. They'll give you a license code as the DVLA phone system still isn't working. You can check that their license is in order, and then you can make the appointment to see them for training. Some of the organizations or some of the people will come with their trailers from their companies, or it might be a horse box, it could be something. There may be some people that will say, look, I need to get this training done. Can you supply, can you source trailers for me? You may have to hire things in for them to use because they don't have the machinery to do it with. But I think more often than not, you're going to get the organizations involved with this who will ask you to be training using their equipment, or you could be using your own if you've got it, if it's conducive. The practical training, if you go on to the next slide, is the practical training is on-road and off-road. So we've got 3 sessions which we've done on a training site. And we're going to go through all the connotations of training sites in a later slide. So let's just bear with what is required at the moment. Hitching the trailer checks, making sure that you've got a true and straight line when it's hitched, and the unhitching. And then there might be a situation where you do this training and they decide that if they go for a final course theory assessment and on-road, that you perhaps do the off-road assessments before they go on road. But really and truly, what should be done is an assessment done of these 3 on-site training sessions before they do any on-road training. That is to reduce the risk to you. You have a duty of care to that person, whether they have a full license or not, because under the eyes of the law, they have come to you for help in developing their skills and their competence to be able to do something else on the road. So they've come to you for your professional advice. Therefore, you have got to make sure that you can put them into a safe environment. Now, you might think, hang on, he's talking baloney here. Every single organization has to have a health and safety policy. If there are 5 employees or more, it has to be written down and be inspected, to be inspected. If it has less than 5 employees, it still has to exist. So therefore, you are duty bound to ensure there is a safe environment in the environment that person is driving in, and the environment they are driving through, whether you're a one-man band or whether you work for a multifaceted company. So we are asking you, for your own safety and for the safety of your student and for their competence, to do the assessment of hitching, unhitching and trailer checks, and assessment after they've been trained on loading and the show me, tell me questions, and an assessment on the reversing and maneuvering process. So you train all that in the yard, and at some time or other, whether it be the same session or they go away and practice it on private land somewhere, and they come back and do an assessment before you do the on-road with them. If you think they've got the competence to do it all in one day, fine. It's down to you how you manage this training. But we are strongly recommending that assessments are done on off-road before you take them and do any of the on-road training in order to help them achieve their driving, towing a trailer to the national driving standards, which is unit 2.3 of the national driving standards for cars and light vans. Once they've done that, if they wish to move on to getting what we call what we're nicknaming the gold standard, which is the certificate that Carly was talking about, then they would then go on and do a road assessment like they did for the B+E test, but this would also then be followed by an overarching theory test. Both of those are a pass or fail. So the driving assessment is really the same as before as they did with the DVSA, except we're asking now for a theory element as well, so that we can actually reinforce that learning has taken place and it hasn't really been a fluke. And when you go on a driving test and the students can fluke a test because there hasn't been much around them, but they also have to have the knowledge. And by putting the theory test after the driving assessment, it means that it cannot be segregated as a learning session, do a test, forget about it, and then do the driving assessment. It doesn't make it a separate entity. It makes it all one thing, and it makes it a lot more useful. We're getting reports now from the National Office of Statistics that currently each week there's 4 serious incidents on the road involving B+E trailers. And the 3 areas of concern are the combination is not a combination. The vehicles do not combine properly. The outfit is not fit, and the driver lacks education. And they are the 3 outcomes of the incidents, the main incidences that are taking place at the moment, or say at the moment, it's been going on for some time, but the Office for National Statistics are saying that that is what's happening at the moment. So we need to address this and make, with this robust system we've got, we feel that it's a good marketing thing for you, and it means that you can be the go-to guys for all training. It's also muted that Europe are now getting to a situation where they're starting to think about having an assessment for Europe for people who don't have B+E. Anyone driving commercially may need a certificate of competence to drive in Europe. It's being bandied in Parliament at the moment. We don't know much about it at the moment, but it's something that's in the offing and may be something in the future. The government are going to be looking at a robust system for that, and I think you're looking at it now. So this is a good opportunity for you. We're giving you tools for assessment or assessment forms. We are giving you, in all of the training, especially on the practical aspects of training, there are 14 key objectives that we have information for you to be able to give to the candidates. They can look through to see the risk elements to all the 14 aspects of what is required for driving safely on the road whilst towing a trailer. And all this can be signed off, a bit like a risk assessment for your purposes as well. So when the training is completed, you can go back to the organisation and say, that's been signed by your candidate as they understand it. I have actually seen it physically and done an assessment to see that they have evidenced the understanding. You can have that and put that in their file. So if you have audits or you have the health and safety executive come in, you can see that that person was signed off as competent to drive that equipment for your company on the day when I did the assessments. And that actually safeguards you in a huge way. It really does. So we've got all that in place for you. We've thought about that as well. We have other training aids and things that you can use for diagrams to help explain things, especially on dual carriageways. And there's other things that we haven't, I'm in the process of writing for the program. And as Carly said, we are still wanting feedback from you as what you actually would like us to produce, especially if you do the more bespoke type of training for high worth, etc. If you can go on to the next slide, please, Tom. And here we're looking at the final assessment, gold standard as we call it. That would be conducted by the approved assessor. So the assessments we're talking about on site would be done by a trainer, because the trainer is going to be the guy that's going to be doing the training on road, and we've got to make sure they're safe. So those assessments are sort of minor competency assessments, can be done by the trainer. But the overarching on-road assessment and the theory will be done at the assessment centres, and that's conducted by the approved assessors. They will assess the key risks on road, looking at the competencies of the student, which really there shouldn't be too much incompetency with the robustness of what we've got, because all of the trainers will be going through a train the trainer course in order for parity to exist across the whole of Great Britain. This course does not exist in Northern Ireland, not currently, because of the European border. The DVA in Northern Ireland have been told by the DFT that they must keep B+E going. It's not very, very prolific over there anyway, but because of the European border, they have to keep that going. So we're in a situation where it's only happening in GB. So the assessments, which from all the training, they should be very, very useful to anybody who needs them for risk management, and certainly for the people who are doing it as an individual private entity. They will be able to get a very good bearing on where they stand in terms of their risk management. And this really is what the insurance companies are after. Is, yes, they do like pass or fail, it's very easy, but they actually take more interest in the risk of what somebody is to them. So if they can see the risk rating on assessments, they're actually they got their ears prick up and they think, right, okay, we can load the policy according to the risk if need be. That's down to the MIB, the Motor Insurance Bureau, and the motor insurance people to sort that out. But we have actually negotiated that there will be some discounts with motor insurance companies for people that do on a robust system like we've put in place for you here. So the assessors will do the assessing, and it's really this assessment that the insurance companies are mainly going to be looking at is something that is accredited through government and the National Council as well, for hitching, unhitching, loading and driving. So it catches all aspects, and the show me tell me checks as well, the assessment done on that. We'll be looking at selective manoeuvres. Well, most that will be done in the off-road section, which will be carried out prior to going on road, but will be logged. The assessments can be optional. The final assessment, the gold standard, the student doesn't have to go that far if they don't want to, but we'd hope you would encourage them to do so that they have got something that's tangible they can put on CVs, and they can put on to the company can put into their registers and audits. The theory test will also cement their information as well, which makes it a lot better. So they type the theory with the practical, so that they can, when they go on the road and they come to situations they haven't come to, perhaps they can draw on the theory in order to get through the problem that they come across, because not all aspects are going to be covered in the on-road training, and not all aspects are going to come up in an on-road assessment, as we all know. But it will achieve better insurance incentives if they go for the gold standard, and give the employers as well an increased recognition, because everyone will recognise the robustness of the driver training that these people have gone through, and the effort that you've put in as well, the effort that we've put in to help you, and the effort that, and all the resources we have for you to come back to us to say, Howard, whoever, I'm struggling with this bit here. How am I supposed to interpret this? That's what we're here for. Us and the NTTA can help you, the DIA and the NTTA jointly can help you to ensure that the robustness is there, so that we've got parity of training in the country, and there is something tangible that is educational as well. If we go on to the next slide, we come to candidate resources, and the accredited trainers and the training centres will have access to supply, and we'll be able to supply the candidates with the online introductory course. We have all that written, it's all ready to go. And this can be completed at the centre if facilities allow, or in the candidate's own time at work or at home. You might think, hang on a minute, that can be cheated, but all right, all that's happening is the candidate or company are cheating themselves. So if we start getting collusion going on in a company, then the company are just increasing their own risk, and they're only cutting their nose to spite their face. So again, we'd ask you to encourage the students to ensure that they do it on their own, because then they come back to you with honesty, because the pre-course form is all about honesty. We're asking them to open up honestly and give you an honest opinion of their competence and their confidence and their experiences, etc. And if you can work with honesty, then you're going to be able to fill the gaps in their knowledge a lot easier, because they're going to be more open to you. The pre-course questionnaire is completed prior to the candidate arriving for training, and it's sent to the trainer beforehand, so you can look at it and discuss when you have the first meeting. Of course, the license would also have been checked at that time as well. So what I'm going to do now is, if Carly wants me to continue with this, I can, or I can hand back to Carly. What do you want me to do, Carly? Do you want to carry on?
You can do the criteria, and I'll do the burning, which is one of the big questions people will have about the whole scheme, and I'll cover the fees, which is probably the other burning question everybody's got.
Okay, so to become an approved centre, we've got two types of centres. We're looking at the approved training centre for trainers now. So the trainers at the centre will be accredited to provide the Safe Towing Scheme training programme and become recognised centre for the training. Now, they'll be able to do the little assessments for the on-site assessments for the off-road bit. That's okay. But the assessors, the assessment centre, that would be the trainers who have additionally gone through a assessment overview for assessing, and then they can get the centre accredited to be an accredited centre. So it's like approved to offer the endpoint certified assessments. And these are the ones that the insurance companies are mainly interested in, and probably the ones that the companies, that any organisation is mostly going to be wanting to get involved with, to show that they can tick the health and safety, the management of work-related road risk boxes, which at the moment they're at a loss to be able to do now that B+E has been withdrawn. And that's the big question they've got. Anytime any companies come to us, it's what we're supposed to do. How do we tell HSE that that person there is competent to go when there's no assessment? So that's the training assessors. The assessment centres will have the trainers that have been additionally looked at to go through an assessor's course to be able, again, to give parity in the assessment across the whole of GB, which is what the DVSA do, effectively. They go and get trained up so everyone gives a parity. There's no disparity anywhere. So if you want to move on, please, Tom, we've got the approved training centres. Under this option of training centres, your organisation will be accredited to deliver the full Safe Towing Scheme training programme and will become a recognised Safe Towing Scheme approved training centre. And you'll have logos for that, etc., to go on your paperwork, etc. Trainers successfully completing the trainer course will also be entered on the Safe Towing Scheme Register of Trainers. So at the moment, in the industry, we've had ADIs, we've had non-ADIs. The ADIs are still on the Category B register for the DVSA and are being monitored by the DVSA on standards checks, and that is quite rigorous. The non-ADIs, we're not asking you to become an ADI. When this course was started, when the process of getting this course organised was started with what Carly mentioned on as TTAG, that was the stakeholders that got involved originally, and the DVSA said, right, well, we need to have a situation where we've got parity of training to some form or other, and therefore the guys who are not ADIs will need to go into a train the trainer system. So again, it's not asking you to become an ADI. We can't ask you to do that. You don't need to do that. But the DVSA are concerned, and the DFT actually are concerned that the standard of delivery of the training. So in other words, the training standards, not the driving standards, the training standards we're talking about at the moment, the training standards are all comparable as well. So all trainers successfully complete the train the trainer course will also be entered into the safe towing scheme for trainers, and the approved centres will also be able to access all the training and modular assessment resources we have developed and have the exclusive ability to offer their candidates the Introduction to Safe Towing online course, which is the one I've mentioned, and the theory test that goes with them to help prepare for the training before they come to you. So the centres, the training centres, will have access to be able to give that to their candidates. That's what the centres will get. They'll register so they can be people, they'll be the go-to guys for the training effectively, is what we're trying to do here. The approved centres, if we go on to the next slide, please. The approved centres will also benefit from the certification of individual trainers. And this is an online train-the-trainer course and theory test. So all trainers, whether they're ADIs or non-ADIs, will need to go through this. Again, this is for parity. This isn't to try and test wits or anything else, because there are non-ADI trainers who are very experienced at doing B+E, have very good equipment, have very good resources and land, etc., and can manage this and do this just as well as anybody else with the experience they've got. What we're looking at here is the parity in the training. So everybody is meeting the same standard across the country. So all the trainers would have to go through an individual train the trainer course. So it'll be delivered via a short online train the trainer course and a theory test. The theory test is linked to the national standards. So it's your knowledge of the national standards for driving, mainly the 2.3, unit 2.3, which is the towing. All trainers successfully complete the trainer course, enter on the safe towing scheme approved trainer register, and we will have regular refreshing training and CPD elements for you. Especially, we get feedback from you saying, right, I want to know that I can get developed in A, B, or C. Tell us that. That's the sort of thing. That's the information we want today. So have the trainers to have access to the trainer help desk, which will be jointly between NTTA and the DIA and Diamond. Access to all training and assessment materials, so all presentations, sample lesson plans, the objectives I mentioned before, the mini assessments, etc., that you can use with candidates. So all your resources will be supplied to you as a registered trainer. So a trainer registered to a training centre will get access to all of this resource. You'll have unique access for your clients to the introductory online course. It's not across the whole of the scheme with the other two providers. It's just us. We're supplying this. Marketing of approved training centres. We might happen to market you as well. Listing and profile on the Safe Towing Scheme website, which is will be up and running very shortly. There is a holding page there already, but that will be developed further. And promotion to the Safe Towing Scheme partners. There will be partners in this as well, which other organisations we are talking to who will need training. They will need the trainers to train their staff, employees, call it what you will. Provision of Safe Towing Scheme branding. That's quite important that we have a logo and branding for this, and other marketing materials for training centres' own promotional activity. So you can go out and sell yourselves. We're giving you that as well. Insurance discounts for your clients on completing training. We have negotiated that for you too. Annual remote audit and feedback sessions, and that again is to help with the parity. So instead of it being really, really onerous with paperwork, we have simplified the process of auditing to make sure that you can produce what we need to keep the standards going, to keep this robust, to keep everybody interested in it. And we'll be able to, if need to, we can come and inspect, but most of it will be done asking you to submit certain paperwork and certain samples of assessments. Okay, so that's going to make it quite easy for you to do. It just means that you have to have a recording system available to you. If we go on to the next slide, please, Tom. We're going to resources available. We've mentioned the online introductory course and the safety aspects of that. Pre-course questionnaire, you'll get that too, so you can get your students to fill that in and send that back to you. And that's a good chance for you as an icebreaker to be able to get to know them quite well in order to know what their training needs are. The learning objectives and summaries, they are very useful. This is all linked to the DVSA's B+C training syllabus, and it's also linked to the national standards of driving as well. It also notes what training standards are being used in order to deliver the driving standards. It's quite robust, and that does help the companies with their occupational safety and health and their management of work-related road risk. So if anyone comes in and audits them under ISO or Bureau Veritas or any such organization, CPD standards office, anything like that, or the HSE come in and say, right, we need you to tell us how this guy was trained, where's the evidence? Bang, that guy, that trainer, train them to those standards of training, the training standards, and they trained them to those driving standards. And this assessment was also passed, and that assessment links to both those standards and the DVSA syllabus. That ticks a box for the company. The HSE can only say, great, you've done what was reasonably practicable for that guy to be safe on the road. You have done everything you possibly can to help any client. And that is a massive, massive marketing resource for you. And we're helping you with the marketing resource by giving you the logos and everything that's required for your marketing. So we're giving you a hell of a lot here, and it's cost us a lot to do it. So don't think this has been thrown together. It hasn't. The series of learning objectives and summaries, lesson summaries, so you'll get all that. And there's also an explanation on how to use those and how to get them signed off as well. And the short training films involved in the introductory theory tests, sorry, in introductory course for your students, which isn't a pass or fail, but the short training films are also in there. You also have access to those as well to use as a resource if you've got a training room or whatever, and you want to reinforce what's trying to be covered and what's trying to be, the objectives that are trying to be achieved, you can use those films as well. And resource questions for the hitch and unhitch, you get a copy of those in order to help with the on-site assessment. So you can give copies of those to the students. They can go away and research them to come back and do the assessment with those, with the trainers on site. So all of this is really quite robust. If you can please move on, please, Tom. So the
just conscious of time, Howard, if we can get onto the kind of fees and criteria. Okay.
Well, this sentence here is just it's really saying that the centres will be, so the approved centres, the centre roles, sorry, are all doing all according to our syllabus that's been written out and the DVSA syllabus as well. You must be able to provide a suitable training area. The DVSA did have a training area of 11 by 66 meters for training. We would expect you to be able to have an area that can do that, that has that, with additional space besides to ensure that there is no conflict between pedestrians and training areas. So we've got to make sure that you can produce evidence to say that the site is insured for the use. It might have to have planning permission as well if you don't own it, but we've got to make sure that the sites are commensurate and reasonable for use for all of the training, and we'll have to ensure, get some evidence from you that that is the case. If you can move on, please, Tom. So the criteria of the trainers obviously, some of them will be ADIs, but they need to be recognised professionally driver training qualifications, such as ADIs, or be registered on the DVSA's registers for B, C, or D categories, and can evidence previous experience of B+E, or they hold categories BE, C1E, and any of the trailer combinations listed there in licensing. to evidence their previous training and experience in these fields. If they aren't an ADI, then they really need to hold the qualifications such as PETALS or the Award in Education and Training or something equivalent, to show a teaching qualification of some sort, to show that they can manage training in the car. That is a proviso from the Department for Transport. So it can be level 3 or level 4. If you need more information on that, then please contact the DIA on that. We have all the information that you need on that. But the evidence can be supplied by way of CVs, official certificates, qualifications, etc. All trainers must complete the trainer-trainer course whether they're an ADI or not, and that's for the parity, and also that everyone has the same knowledge, and that's why they're going to do a theory test. So that will result in the trainer-trainer certification and entry onto the safe towing scheme. If you can move on, Tom, please. And so we now got the situation of, I believe it's vehicles. So the trailers, if you have, it's really the same as what the DVSA had. The trailer has to have a greater mass than 750 kilos to be regarded in the sector. It must be able to carry a 600 litre IBC or 600 kilos of aggregate in bags with 25 kilogram mass. That's no different from the DVSA's remit on the DVSA, on the B epilepsy test. It must not exceed 7 meters in length, excluding the A-frame. That's the same as the DVSA. And 18 meters must not exceed 18 meters in length in combination, or be more than 2.55 meters wide. The chassis plate is important. Any trainer or assessor must be able to read chassis plates clearly. They must be accessible and clearly able to be read. The category B vehicle has got to have the proper towing capability. The DVSA made many complaints about the vehicles being too small. They were able to do it, but they weren't really conducive to the job. We need to ensure that you have got a proper towing vehicle that has the proper capability to ensure that this can be done, that they can tow the relevant trailer. And that's the details that are there. So, and the mirrors, the appropriate mirrors must be fitted to be able to see 20 meters behind the vehicle. The must be fit to appropriate extension mirrors that can see 4 meters wide of the combination at a distance of 20 meters to the rear of the mirrors. So, okay, so that's the criteria we're looking for. If you need any more clarification on that, you can get in touch with us on that as well. So move on, please.
And we are noting your feedback in the questions as you're making them as well. And I know some of the team are responding, but we'll also respond to those questions at the end too.
So talking about training centre criteria now with insurances, we mentioned very briefly that the organisation must provide evidence that all the vehicles are insured and also that the land is insured, and if necessary, there is planning permission for it. But above all, there must be the size for the manoeuvring, and it mustn't conflict with pedestrian areas, and ideally the sites have to have the facilities for people to be able to rest if necessary, have lunch if they're having a whole day course, etc. They don't have to be on site, these facilities, but they must be nearby. So if you're on, say you're sharing a site with perhaps a macro cash and carry who've rented some land to you, but the macro has got a canteen in it and there's toilets, etc., that would be quite conducive, providing that the pedestrians are not having to cross a training area to get to that site. So that's really, again, you not just got health and safety on the road, you've got health and safety of the site to consider as well, and we must be happy that that is conducive. So I'll move on to you now, Carly, if you will, to the training centre fees.
Cool. Thanks for that, Howard. As I said, we're going to answer some of the questions you're popping up already about the criteria in a moment. So another burning question that I know people want to know and will also have an opinion of from what I've seen of feedback from Facebook forums, etc. Just to start out from the start point here, and a caveat, we have received no funding to develop this scheme. This has all been invested by NTTA and DIA to develop the materials, spend the time on it at all. None of the schemes so far have received any funding from any government body or any other party at all to develop this scheme. And as you charge for training yourself, and as any business charges for a product or service, there is a charge for what we're going to be doing here. But it's a choice. You will make a choice of whether you want to be involved in this scheme or not. Somebody has just commented in the Q&A that we're going to put people out of business with something that actually we're not going to put you out of business, because A, we don't have the right to do that, and B, our scheme is a choice. We realise that. That's why we're trying to extol its benefits and market it to you to some degree, and we'll be doing a lot of work to market it to not just the industry but end customers as well. But you do have a choice. No one is putting a gun to your head to be involved in this scheme. But we're trying to make it as reasonable as we can in terms of what your involvement is to become an approved trainer, and we're trying to make the fees as reasonable as we can as well. So the fees that you can see here, we have consulted with some trainers. We've also looked at what other providers are looking for their assessment fees as well. The other caveat I've put on this as well, we're the only scheme so far that's been approved that has asked the question from start to end, not about getting funding for ourselves to develop this scheme. We've invested in this in ourselves. We're the only scheme to have asked if any funding will be available to help trainers develop their approved status. And that is a conversation that we will have ongoing with Department for Transport and DVSA. Now, we can't promise anything. It's not within my remit to access that funding or create that funding. That is a governmental thing. But we have asked the question. We keep asking it. We have had the indication there will be some consideration of some assistance for trainers. The government is not completely blind and deaf to the stress and frustration that's been caused by the removal of the B+E test. But rather than, as we've seen on some Facebook forums, and don't think we don't see them, don't think any Facebook forum is completely closed and we don't see any of the negative comments. We get them screenshotted to us, they get sent to us, and we use that as part of our feedback. Even the stuff that is swearing at us, and criticising us and critting personnel, and even the phone calls that criticise people about this scheme before they even knew anything about it as well. We do take it on board. And we try to incorporate some of that feedback into everything we're presenting to you today, and we will do going forward. What we just like is the respect of hearing us out first, rather than leaping to criticise the scheme. So the approved training centres, the first type of centre that we spoke about there that you can become if you so choose to do so. They will pay one annually recurring fee, which covers all trainers in the organisation and all the benefits that we've spoken about. It also covers all the trainer training. So we're not going to be asking for extra fees for people to upskill, as quite a lot of qualifying schemes do. If I, for example, wanted to go and become an approved centre for another education body like Highfield and many of the people that we use to endorse our CPD programmes, not only do we have to pay a centre fee and lots of other fees and application fees, we also have to pay for every trainer to be trained and also every trainer to be certified on those courses. And that runs into its thousands. Our own DVSA accreditation each year costs us thousands as well. So we've tried to acknowledge the problems that the industry has, but acknowledge that there are approved government schemes now, and that some of those schemes are charging quite a lot more than what we're charging here. So if you're an organisation with less than 5 trainers, your annual fee for accredited status will be £325. There's a £100 application fee chargeable on a one-time only basis to anybody coming approved. So the annual fee will be £325 for less than 5 trainers. That releases the approval, the accreditation of your centre, all of the quality marks, all of the marketing materials, and all of the learning resources as well, and the trainer programme and certification, that one £325 fee. There's also a candidate registration fee, which has to be paid by each candidate registering to become certified under the scheme as well. As you can see, there's an increasing scale of schemes because we've tried to bear in mind that larger organisations who have larger trainers will also be training in larger volumes. So their potential for income is larger. So therefore, they should pay more. And that, again, is very normal in accrediting schemes in all areas of vocational and academic education. You pay more, the more people that are going through your books, the more people that are being accredited under your scheme as trainers as well. So that's what we've arrived at in the training centre fees. Well, we will listen to feedback today. We've taken back feedback on board, but those are pretty much the figures that we've arrived at so far. If we can move on, please, to the approved assessment fees, and I'll look at the questions when we've gone through the whole presentation. As I said, the approved, that's probably my fault, the order. The approved assessment centres, those are the differentiated to the training centre. These are for any training centre who wishes to additionally become an approved assessment centre and offer tests yourself. Again, you don't have to do it. Your customers don't have to do it. We recognise that. We'll be doing our best to market why customers should do a final assessment. But this is an option for businesses that want to diversify and increase the products and services they can offer to customers. This is an option. Become an approved assessment centre, offer an equivalent, but in our view, improved version of the old B+C test. Give your customers an additional assessment, which actually quite a lot of occupational users will want, because they'll want the certification to say they've done an endpoint assessment. And this allows the trainers to be able to deliver these assessments once you to be trained, unlike the old B+C test run by the DVSA, where you weren't allowed to provide it and you certainly didn't see any income from it as well. Under the assessment centres, we'll do full initial assessment and training of B+E assessors. So that can be a B+E trainer who's already been approved under the scheme, can become an assessor. They have to just go through additional assessor training as well. That will be done under the standards and performance standards of the Diamond Advanced Motoring brand. We've got a very high level of Diamond Examiner training status. It's internationally recognised as a quality mark of driver trainer assessment. And it's something that you can acquire from this scheme as well. All assessors are entered into the Safe Tone Scheme register. There's regular refresher training for those individuals on there. We ensure that people have got access to regular refresher training and CPD on all of our training programs, because we want to make sure that those training under our brands have the right quality and that their knowledge is up to date. If you sell training, you're effectively selling knowledge acquisition. So that knowledge has to be up to date. Otherwise, your product isn't fit for purpose. We'll offer a help desk to both assessors and trainers if they have any issues with candidates, just like any of our members can call us at any time and ask us for advice about dealing with that particular learning issue or learning approach or assessment issue or approach as well. As part of the actual practical assessment, which we'll provide all materials for and training in how to do, there is also an online theory test, which enables candidates who are choosing this option. I keep having to say this because people keep saying things in the comments like, you know, who's going to choose this? Nobody's going to do it. Yeah, exactly. Nobody does need to do it, but they do. These are the benefits to those people who choose to engage. The online theory test helps the candidate test themselves, test their knowledge, helps them certify that they've actually been able to develop that knowledge and demonstrate they have that knowledge through theory. Helps them demonstrate that to employers. Employers may want it, particularly fleet, because they want to see that there is proper quality assurance measures and risk assurance measures in place here as well. And it also gives us a quality assurance measure ourselves. Quite frankly, if you're operating any kind of quality improvement scheme, even if people are paying you for it, you still have a duty of care to make sure it's a quality process. So the theory test will also allow us to see how candidates are performing with the training. It helps us tweak the training, helps us tweak the testing and make sure it's actually suited to purpose as well. So we'll give you access to all of that. We'll also be marketing the tests. We'll be marketing the incentives. We'll be trying to encourage people to do endpoint assessment as well. And as you'll see from the fees in a moment, there will be a fee that is payable to the scheme for the certification for the end assessment, and it pays for the theory test, but the assessment centre keeps the balance of the assessment fee, which is not what happened, obviously, with the old B+E DVSA release test. Can you just tab onto the actual fees there rather than the marketing pitch? To become an approved assessment centre, provided your centre and your trainers have already met all the approved training centre criteria and have been approved as approved training centre, you can then become an assessment centre. Now, there are arguments out there that assessors and trainers should completely be separated by Chinese walls and there shouldn't be people assessing who've done the training. That is becoming less and less so in many respects in vocational education and training. There are lots of instances where there is still a quality process where the trainer can do the assessing. And what we've done is be pragmatic. In an ideal world, yes, we'd probably have some kind of examiner status person who comes in and does the assessment, and then there's no there's no capacity at all for anybody to say the trainer's just passing off their own training as being good enough. We think with the theory test and other checks and balances that are in the system and the training that we'll give to trainers to become assessors, you can offer a fair assessment delivered by the trainer, and they'll have every support to do that as well. And we think to be able to allow the industry to be able to offer assessments itself and replace that gap, this is the best way of doing it. Allow training centres to become assessment centres as well. So those successfully completing training will become certified safe towing scheme assessors. That will allow those assessment centres not only to provide and market tests and deliver those to their own customer base, they could also market them to other people who've completed towing training with other centres who haven't chosen to offer any end assessment. So that could be a fleet who's doing their own in-house training, but they want somebody independently to come in and do the assessment. Or it could be that people locally are seeking a test and certification, and their training provider has opted not to offer assessments, but they can refer on to you should they wish. Or the customer seeks you out because you're offering it and their provider has chosen not to offer that additional product and service. You can become an approved assessment centre at the same time as you're applying to become an approved training centre. Obviously, you have to do your trainer and all of the stuff you need to do to become a training centre before you can actually start offering the assessments, because you need to understand the training programme before you can deliver assessments that are effectively endpoint assessing the training programme itself. Can we move the slide on? So the fees becoming an approved assessment centre are in addition. There are, again, based on the volume of trainers in an organisation. There'll be one annually recurring fee, which covers all assessors in your organisation. Candidates will also be charged a small certification fee, which is payable to the Safe Towing Scheme. That pays for the theory test and the marking of that, and all the administration of that, and that pays for certification to be issued as well. That is completely normal in vocational testing and assessment, and most customers will actually recognise that. Again, there will always be the customers who want the easiest win and the race to the bottom, and they want just to do something as facile and easy as possible and walk away getting it. And there will also be sometimes customers who are okay with that. There are also customers who will often try and pass off a certificate they've got for that, but they haven't actually done the end thing, and will be monitoring for that kind of behaviour as well. There are those who will want to actually test themselves, whether they're a leisure tower who just wants the validity of having done an extra test, but there will certainly be occupational users. There will be fleet decision makers, not necessarily the drivers themselves, but their employers who will want this level of assessment. And we've already talked to some of those fleets. And in discussions with the wider stakeholders in DVSA, which have included some large fleet decision makers, they have all said they want schemes that offer final assessments and certified. Those are the schemes that they will deal with. They won't be interested in ones that can't prove that there's some formal assessments going on in the system. So if you're somebody who wants to be able to approach fleets and offer products and services to them in respect to B+E training, there are going to be fleets who are going to want these kind of endpoint assessments. So it's worth considering becoming an approved assessment centre. Obviously, that fee also includes the training of every assessor to become somebody who can offer driving assessments for towing purposes as well. So it's an upskilling opportunity for those who've never conducted formal assessments or been certified to do so before as well. So again, we've got the fee for less than 5 assessors in an organisation. That one fee covers everybody in that organisation of that size. And then we've got the fee for those who have more than 5 assessors, because frankly, they're doing more volume of customers, their income is greater. And again, as I said before, that is how a lot of vocational accrediting bodies work their fees and their approval status. Can we move on? Obviously, with this being an approved scheme, a recognised scheme that is government-backed, there is a quality assurance and monitoring level of this. We don't just say, yeah, submit something to us, looks about okay, pay the fee, you're all right now, go off and do what you want to do. That would not be a quality scheme at all, and would lose its value over time to both the end user and the trainer themselves as well. So there will be an element of monitoring with this scheme. We won't get endorsed by government if we don't have a monitoring element of the scheme. So as well as managing and maintaining the training training registration process, the safe towing scheme will monitor scheme and provide quality assurance. Now, quality assurance is not just about Big Brother watching you, teaching you to suck eggs and telling you off when you don't suck them properly. It's actually about giving you valuable feedback and support with developing your training. If anyone sits there and says, I'm perfect, I offer a perfect product, and I'm brilliant at what I do, I'd actually worry about that individual because that is self-endorsement, and that is not necessarily what customers will value and should be valued anyway. There's some independent quality assurance actually can be very healthy for organisations, and all the organisations sat here presenting today are independently monitored, particularly those of you who are also delegates today who are approved driving instructors or other officially registered professional driver trainers. You're subject to regulation and quality assurance as well. And that's what the public customer and also the occupational and corporate customer is looking for in a scheme too, to make sure it's a good quality process. So in the first year of being an approved centre, there will be remote audits. Now, in a perfect world, again, you would do physical audits, you would come out and visit people. If we can do that in the future, we can do that. And if organisations want that to happen, but that's not a requirement of the initial setup of the scheme. One of the reasons that is because of getting to a mass of people who are approved quicker and getting the scheme up and running. If we had to build in lots of visits, it would become very costly and very timely for everybody involved in the process. So in the initial scheme, we're going to be doing these remote audits where we'll be speaking to approved centres and looking at what they're doing, any problems they've got with those, taking their feedback, giving feedback on what we're seeing in terms of the theory test results and the practical test results as well, and helping centres to really develop what they actually do. And, as I said, we'll be taking feedback on our part of it and what we need to do to develop training to suit the purposes of the trainers and the trainees better, and the assessments. We'll be looking to develop some CPD specifically for approved trainers and assessors to ensure that quality and consistency is there. Again, you can't sell knowledge acquisition, which is training, without updating that knowledge and making sure it's absolutely the best it can be and as up to date and accurate as it can be. We'll be taking management information as a set from various different sources, including theory tests and final practical assessments. We'll also be combining them with some candidate satisfaction questionnaires, which we'll be expecting approved centres to distribute, but we'll also be doing some independent candidate satisfaction questionnaires as well to see what the person who has paid you money thinks of the scheme and the training, as well as those of you who are paying us a fee for the scheme think of it as well. Overall, this is not just our take on it, but this is DVSA, DFT and everybody else's take on it, including some of those end customers in the fleet world and the leisure towing, etc., fed into the process. They would like to see this quality assurance process because it will resolve some of the legacy issues of an inconsistency in the quality and standards of B+E training and a lack of real focus on what is actually delivered. Can we just move forward? So we're going to go to the questions now, but for further information, and if you're still interested in becoming a accredited centre, as I said, you have a choice about whether you become endorsed by a government scheme, of which there are 3, or not. You can choose to carry on endorsing your own work and justifying that if you wish to end customers. This is a scheme that's designed to help you make that argument when you're talking to people about why invest in your organisation for training, that you actually have gone through an accredited route, you have approvals for government, you're operating as part of a nationally approved government scheme as well. So if you still want to be involved in that, there is an application pack and inquiries that will be shortly available. As I said, there's still some things we're waiting for approval from DVSA. There's still some elements of the scheme that we're just fine-tuning, plus we're also going to take some feedback from these training sessions today. So those will be available early next week. If you go to the safetowing.co.uk site now, you can register your interest in the scheme. That form will give us your details. So as soon as we have that, we will be able to send out the application pack to you as well. We hope that is going to be by early next week. As I said, we're waiting for approval for a couple of things. It should take between 2 to 3 weeks once you've submitted your application for us to approve it. We give that timeline. You could bang it in and you could have everything in your application done and dusted and perfect and it could be a lot quicker. However, our experience of approvals processes is sometimes there's bits missing in terms of evidence from the application form or information that's not on the form. There may be some chewing and froing between us. It is a new scheme after all as well. So it could take 2 to 3 weeks for those approvals to actually come through. Once you have been approved, though, all of the course materials, all the marketing materials, all of that will be released to you, and you can just get on with delivering under this scheme and delivering generally, and hopefully this scheme will prove some worth to you and your training organisation as well. Right, can we move to probably the most important bit from our perspective, which is us not talking so much about what we think is great and recognising some of the issues, but also speaking to people here today who've made time for it to see what they think, what's missing, what they'd like to see done better, and you know what they'd like and don't like about what we've presented here today and overall. So let's move to the Q&A. We have answered some as we've gone through. Howard, is there anything that you want to kick off with in terms of what you can see from the training content? Hopefully you're seeing stuff on there that helps you in terms of feedback as well. I'm picking up a couple of things that people are usefully putting in the Q&A.
Try
You're on
right.
mute.
The biggest thing is the lack of land. The DVSA put down originally the remit of the 66 by the size of the land being 11 by 66, and that I do appreciate is HGV size. There is a scaled down version of this, but the DVSA have not released what that is. It's land is obviously the biggest question we got here. People saying if we can't reduce the size of the land, it's not going to be possible to do. For us to get the accreditation from the DFT, DVSA, the council, etc., we've got to go by what they say. So we'll have to go back to them and say that the biggest feedback we're getting now is that if we use the land that's been used that BPSC was using before, the trainers are saying that the land's not available. What will the DVSA accept as an acceptable size of land for assessments and for training? I do know there is a scaled down version. I think it's 55 metres, I think it is. I'm not sure, it might be lower than that. But I have to get this verified by the chief examiner and find out what it is and come back to you. But I would say don't discount the scheme because of that, because if the DVSA have left this big void, the DFT have left this big void, they want this void filled. They need to come to a compromise with this somewhere along the line. So there will be a solution to this land problem. Don't worry, there will be a solution to it.
Just going to a question about fees there. Will the candidate have to pay the £25 registration fee plus the 45 plus the £115 fee? No, not all of that. So the candidate will have to pay a £25 registration fee to undertake the training under the Safe Towing scheme. If they want to do the final assessment optionally, that's when they would pay the extra £45. The £115 test fee is the overall recommended pricing of the final assessment. So the £45 is factored into that recommended £115. Now, an approved assessment centre can choose to charge more than that for a final assessment. Now, people are saying, oh, people won't pay for an even assessment. I can assure you there are a lot of people that pay for advanced testing to be done in fleets, for example, and even small trade organisations. So there are customers who want that choice. So saying there isn't a customer base for this, that's up to you to make that decision. There will be people who become approved assessment centres, will find the market, will help them find the market because we'll be promoting this to end customers as well. We'll be promoting the value of an assessment. And the £115, as I said, is a choice by the assessment centre. We're not setting that fee. We're using 115 as that's the original B+E DVSA test fee. The £45 comes off that 115. That comes to us as the approving body and the certifying body, and for the theory test element, the assessment centre keeps the balance of that income. That's why it's up to them to set the test fee. On 115, they're already making some money. If you want to make more money, there's a way of selling that. There's always a customer who is willing to pay more and values that experience. As much as there's a customer that says they won't pay anything and they want the easiest route possible, there are consumers out there, we're happy to pay for quality. We're happy to pay for the best thing. And denying yourselves the opportunity to do that seems a little bit short-sighted, particularly in an industry that is saying that it desperately needs more income. If you continue to just say nothing will work, people won't pay for that, we won't get a market out of it, then maybe this is the time to really look at what can you sell to the customers that is going to work for you as a business and generate income, and where can you upsell things that will generate more income as well. And again, it comes down to the thing that I said earlier on, this is an option. If you don't like it, you don't have to engage with it. But there will be those that will like it and they want this kind of option. And that's why we've tried to deliver a scheme that has that optionality in it, that has these added resources, has these added attractive benefits and products in them as well. And we hope that some people make that choice as well. Around the cost of, engaging in becoming approved in the first place, as I said before as well, we recognise this has been a really, really difficult time for this particular part of the driver training industry. And that is why we've asked government if they're going to support you. We haven't asked government to come and fund us to do this work. This has been mainly invested in by NTTA and DIA at our cost. And there's a massive risk to that. No one could engage in the scheme at all, and there's no money to be had anywhere. As it is, and I know the figures behind the scenes, there is no real profitability or income coming for this scheme for any organisation. It's basically the fees that we've got there will just cover the cost of the initial investment and not really much more, given also the size of the market we're talking here. But we decided to engage in it. Government asked us to do it. We've put the work in. We wanted to be able to support where we could. However, as I said, we have asked, would there be support from government for the individual training organisations to become accredited? That's been asked in many a forum. We've gone back to them recently. Sarah in particular has been using her usual polite and diplomatic way of approaching that and telling them exactly what they should be doing for the industry. And we have some meetings on that specific subject ongoing. I can't announce anything here. I can't promise you anything. It's not my budget. It's not my decision to make. All we can do is keep lobbying for that support to help people get off the ground if they want to be approved under a nationally accredited scheme. Again, you can choose not to be approved or accredited, to endorse your own work and your own training and carry on as you did before. And that is one route to go down. For those who do want to engage, those will be the people that would be able to access subsidies to be able to kind of access one of these three schemes. Is there any other questions that people can see are burning ones that we haven't answered in our specific slide or in any of the answers that we've given subsequently?
I can see one regarding the discount for insurance. I'd just like to say that we have got people on board. The discounts will be for, they're going to try and help everybody to do with driving. But if you've got a person who just wants to take the driving test, the towing test for their own personal needs, for horse box or caravan or whatever, there is going to be a discount for them. But for a business, if a business puts people through for their business, they are going to offer business public liability discounts, etc. for the business as well. So everybody should gain something out of this. And we are also hoping that they're going to help you guys as well. But yeah, so anybody who takes the full test, they will get some kind of discount, whether it's personal and business or both.
Just going back to Sarah's question about final assessors, do they need an additional qualification? No. We decided to be pragmatic about this scheme. Obviously, Diamond is an assessment brand. All our examiners go through a much more intensive training program to become examiners. So what we're not holding out here is that anybody who does an assessment program is going to be recognised as a driving examiner status or a Diamond examiner status person. They're simply being recognised as an assessor able to assess under this scheme. So for that purpose, if you've already been approved as a trainer under the scheme and you successfully complete the online training course and theory test for the assessor part of it, and you've decided to pay the fee and become an assessment centre, that will suffice to become an assessor of the scheme. The training that you'll do as an assessor is in assessment principles, so driving assessor principles, learning how to be an assessor as a driver trainer, and the difference between being a driver trainer and an assessor. And it will also be about the marking scheme itself, and what the assessment standards are too. So hopefully that makes it a little bit easier for people to think about becoming an assessor, because we're not expecting you to have something like a driving examiner qualification or a vocational assessor's qualification. We will be giving that training. And it will be useful upskilling for people, even although it's limited in terms of certification is only for this scheme, and it doesn't qualify to be a driving examiner per se. It still gives you some useful, skills and knowledge about driving assessments that you might want to take on board and develop in other areas and other vocational assessment routes as well. Just to answer Robert's question, yes, the webinar is going to be recorded. It'll be available normally within 24 to 48 hours because there's no editing needed to something like a webinar. When we've had to do webinars in the past with people like DVSA, things have taken a little bit longer because although we would be happy to sign things off and just publish what was recorded on the day and not edit it too much, stakeholders we find sometimes that we do webinars with in partnership like to go through the recordings and edit them slightly. So that's what takes some time for us to publish them. But we'll try and get this out to people within 24 to 48 hours because I do appreciate it's been a long slog today, and I appreciate your patience staying with us on here. A lot of detail to take in, and at least then you can go back over the slides in your own time. The Becoming an Approved Assessor application pack, which will be out early next week, does give this detail as well and guidance on completing the application form. Again, we've tried not to make it too onerous for people. We want people to engage, so you should find a lot more information in that when we send that. So that's why I'd encourage people to fill out the form, registering your interest, because that means we'll get the application form out to those people much, much more quickly. Is there any more questions, guys, that you can see from your point of view? Because I'm just kind of going up and down. Anything from your side, Howard or Tom or Julie or Sarah, that you think that I've completely missed on here? Hopefully we've covered off things like the land aspect of those. I saw some of those questions kind of come in just before we got to the criteria. So hopefully we've answered the question there that we're not expecting it to be your own land, because we recognise a lot of you don't actually train on your own land. The application process will ask you to satisfy the criteria that the land is appropriate for the type of training that's going to take place as well. And hopefully that will become clear in the application documents as well. But if there isn't any more burning questions right now, I'm going to end the session. We've taken these questions on board. We've got copies of the questions, so those are fed back to the team who are developing the actual content and the application process as well. It's been great for us to hear what you have to say about it, because, as I said, we're not saying this is a perfect being. We're not holding it out as such. We're going through a discovery process and a solutionizing process as much as you guys have had to. But we did note a lot of feedback to the DVSA seminars, which again, I'm going to reiterate, we would have loved to be actually seen to be on there. We were there. We would have liked to have been seen to be on there and speak to you directly about our schemes. And we asked for that right up to the 11th hour. I was saying, Mark Wynne, are you really going to present my slide and answer all my questions? Because you don't even know all the answers to these questions. But DVSA wanted to try and keep it quite tight timing-wise and not allow any other voices. But we were there, and we've taken feedback from those sessions as well. And that's one of the reasons that we're very clear about the fact that we will continue to take feedback as we develop this scheme. Even when it's technically launched, we will still be evolving elements of it, because it's only really when you get a product out on the ground in the hands of the customer and they're able to rip it apart and look at it in practice and with their customer, you find out some of the challenges of the product, what works, what doesn't work. So we will continue to be open-minded about tweaking aspects. So please keep that dialogue going with us. We really appreciate all the feedback that you've given so far, and we hope to be able to work with some of you moving forward as well on this scheme. And thank you for your patience and your time with us today. We know time is money for trainers, so we really do appreciate that you've given us that time today. It's really valuable to us. Thanks very much, folks, and thanks to my fellow panelists for their input today as well. Take care. Bye.